Yeah, this is my first talk. I'm not prepared at all. Obligatory lightning talk disclaimer. You can read it. I don't have time, so I'm gonna start by going on a tangent. Because I'm gonna rant about some technologies right now. This is specifically about my attempt at getting away from hand charts. And I just want to highlight that, even though I am unhappy using hand charts, usually there's no objectively bad design. Hand charts solve a specific problem that one person had 10 years ago, and I'm just salty that it's not the same problem that I'm trying to solve, which is running bigger systems where using Go templates is just not the right way of doing it. But I just don't want to make sure there are open source contributors contributing to this project, and I know there's a lot of frustration with this problem of hand charts that sometimes makes it a little bit difficult. But yeah, it's just I have a different problem, and I want to read my hierarchy sometimes. So essentially, the problem that you have in Kubernetes world sometimes is you have files like this. And from an architecture perspective, the issue that you have is for example, here at service 1, is you can't actually give this any random name, because service 1 it has to be the same name as the service that is actually defined. So this is from a cohesion perspective. This is called low cohesion. Essentially, you have to have it. It has to be a certain name, or else this will fail. But you will only find out that it will fail after 5 minutes after you've actually pushed this. So you're kind of committing and praying, and this is ends up in a very slow and brittle process. Same thing here with the second and first .r.com. Various issues. Okay, I accidentally opened this file when I actually just meant to move to it. Just a second. Here we go. I want to start with a game with you folks. The game is this code or is this configuration? Okay. Is this code or is this configuration?
Configuration.
Yes, I would agree. This is going to get more subjective over time. Is this code or is this configuration? Wait a second, I'm going to scroll a little bit so it's clearer. It's code. This is code. This is the, I think it's the cargo compiler part of it. Rust compiler. Is this code or is this configuration? But you can't see it. Is this code or is this configuration?
Configuration.
It's code. But here's the thing. Docker file. Is this code or is, well, you're seeing the exact same code, but is this code or is this configuration?
Well.
Code
that does configuration.
Sorry?
It's code that does configuration.
You can say either way, right? Yeah, it is. I mean, it's configuration as code, but it's also kind of a weird mix where we have this entry point, which is a configuration essentially. We have the work tier, which is a weird mix, where it's it says which directory you're building the OCI image in, but it's also the directory that you're entering into when you run the image. So it's a weird mix of code and configuration. And ironically, exactly these things that I'm calling configurations are also the ones that you then need Docker Compose files for to override for your own use case. So those are kind of separate, and it's really weird that these are in the same file. So essentially, what I'm saying is, or the case that I could make if I had more than 8 minutes, but is that you get really nice things if you try to actually actively separate code and configuration, because then down the line, architecturally, I hypothesize that that's going to be really nice. But I'm here to rant about YAML, so I want to show you this one. Is this code or is this configuration?
Yes.
This is code. Yes, thank you. This is I mean, it's clearly code. It's you're one operation running after the other. I have this theory that if you see lists in YAML, that's a code smell. I think we should not have those. I think it should just be unordered sets. Sets are okay, but once you have order, you're basically running instructions. And you should start thinking, maybe I should use some code for this. Because at some point, you can start, it starts like this. This is reasonable, but then you will always, once you're running instructions, you need to gate them with some if kind of thing. So you start doing this, and then you're thinking, well, I have multiple of those, so you start doing this, and it's well, they're depending on certain situations, so you start doing this, and you can afford this if you are Ansible and you have a lot of money. But if you're running this on your own, this is going to be pain. Pulumi, is this code or is this configuration? I'm actually. Oh. Look at it.
Configuration.
Well, I would argue this is configuration. I mean, it's Python, but it's this thing is exactly equivalent to this, which is, Pulumi is basically a Terraform alternative. And the interesting thing here is what Pulumi does is, so the thing that you don't get with YAML or JSON or whatever is type checking and validity checking. So here, the pattern is called, I think it's like build instead of 3 minutes left. Okay, anyways, next slide. This thing is interesting because this is basically, this tries to solve, so this is configuration. Sorry, I don't have time to ask you. I would argue this is configuration even though this is TypeScript and it looks very codey. But this is all just building together a configuration file. Pattern-wise, I think it is very desirable to be able to see configuration and, well, like, so there are basically two design patterns that personally make my tummy feel good architecturally. One thing is when the files that you have kind of reflect the org chart in your company. Like you have one role, one file, or one role, one module. And this is the case here. Like this is all configuration specific. Like this is a different thing. Like this is another example, and this is basically what, like, so this is what the Polumi team officially puts out as example. This is what people do with it. I found this on the internet. It's otherwise great, but like you can see like a weird mix of like logic and processing, and but then also configuration. So this is like an example of like multiple roles in one file. Here it's nicely separated. I like this. What I don't like is you can't really see the artifact that's being created, which is why, for example, Apple, who we all love dearly, created a language called Pickle. What Pickle does is it looks very much like JSON, but it gives you stuff like when protections, it gives you stuff like imports. So essentially the question is, can we create a configuration file like YAML and JSON that gives us just the things that we need for configuration management, but without actually giving us the power like Python, like in this other example that I showed, to like start mixing it with code in weird ways, because that way we can separate code and configuration nicely, and we have the roles separated. There's something called Timoni, which I haven't used yet, but I'm very interested in. It's based on Q, that one I have used. It's very frustrating to use, but in theory it's great. Also, it is, okay, wait, I have to say though, I can't mention Q without saying it is financed by Nazis, in parts. So you have to like try to use your own ecosystem around it. Like the technology is interesting. Here's an example. So essentially, Q, like all of these, like Pickle also, they all compile to JSON. Here you basically describe your schema. It looks like this. So you have some logic here. You have a lot of logic here. You describe what the thing looks like, and then you put your values in here, and you use something called a rendered manifest pattern. So what we currently do a lot in Kubernetes world is like we render our manifest, currently Helm charts, within Argo CD. And that way basically you're dependent on Argo CD getting it right, and if something goes wrong during your Helm rendering, you will never really know because the errors are kind of unclear. What you do instead is, in the rendered manifest pattern, is you have Argo CD just use YAML charts, YAML files, and instead render your meta configuration, like with Q, like with Pickle, into YAML charts, and then have Argo CD just render the YAML charts. And that way you basically have a lot of your configuration, depending on how careful you've been in like setting it up, have like a lot of type checking, a lot of like logic checking, built in, and basically can run all of this on your computer and only then commit it once you already have a lot of confirmation that it actually runs. Okay, I managed to put this into 8 minutes. Thank you.